this lecture, you will create and execute your very first Lambda function from within the AWS console. To do that, go to Services, click on Lambda. That will take you to the Lambda service. Once in there, click on Create Function to create your very first Lambda function. There are 4 different options we can pick from. We are going to author it from scratch. You can use an existing blueprint which will have some sample code for predefined use cases depending on your application. You can use a container image that is already there to run your Lambda function, or you can browse through the huge repository where there is a lot of serverless applications, and your team can add to this repository as well, which you can pick from. We are going to do it from scratch. All these options you see here are also available when you use SAM CLI to create your Lambda functions later on, and you will learn how to do that. For now, let's stick to author from scratch. To create a Lambda function, you provide the basic information. First, you pick how you want to create it. Next, you provide a function name. Call it first Lambda from console. Next, you pick a runtime depending on the language, the programming language you are using. For now, we'll stick to Node 12.x. I'll tell you the reason. There are a lot of options here, from .NET to Google Go to Python, Ruby, and it supports Java 8 and Java 11 as well. But we'll stick to Node.js 12 because in the next screen, we'll be able to edit our code within the web browser. There is an editor that the AWS provides within the web browser that can be used to make changes to the code. If you pick Java, we'll not have that option. We'll have to upload our code as of now. That's the reason for this. I am picking Node.js. In lectures later on, we will be creating several Java-based Lambda functions and deploying them. Next step is to give our Lambda function the required permissions. We are leaving it at the default permissions. Default permissions, what it does is it will create a IAM role. Let me scroll it down and zoom it a little. It will create a new role with basic Lambda permissions. And what are those basic Lambda permissions? Here. It creates an execution role with permissions to upload the logs to Amazon CloudWatch logs. So this Lambda function will have an IAM role that will allow the Lambda when it executes to write the logs to CloudWatch. If you want any additional permissions, you can always create your own role and assign policies or policy templates to that role so that your Lambda function can do more things, or you can use an existing role as well. You will be doing all that in lectures later on. And in advanced settings, you can sign the code that is being uploaded to Lambda, which is optional. You can also optionally pick a virtual private cloud if you have it for your organization within which you want this Lambda to be run. We are not going to do any of that. Create function. As soon as you do this, it will create a Lambda function using Node. A simple Hello World Node.js application will be created. It will be deployed to the Lambda repository. There we go. It says successfully created the function. You can now make changes to it, and you can also invoke it using this test button. That is the beauty of it. Typically, a Lambda function will be triggered by an event. This could be another resource like S3, or it could be another resource like API gateway, etc., which is triggering our Lambda function. We will learn more about it in lectures later on. But right now we are going to test it using this test button that will trigger our Lambda function, and we can see the output. Where will the output come from? Scroll down. This is the reason I picked Node.js. We can edit our function code right here in the browser window. See this, there is a beautiful editor that is available, and this is the default code that got added to the index.js file. There is a asynchronous function, and all this function returns is this constant value response we are defining. The JSON has status code 200 and a string which is a constant, which will go back for the body key. This guy receives an event, but it doesn't do anything with the event. It simply returns a static response back. How do we trigger and test this Lambda function? If you hit this test button, it will open a window where you can configure test data. So you give this test event a name, call it test first Lambda. with this input data. This input data can be anything. Our Lambda function currently doesn't care about this input data. It is not using the data that comes in as a parameter. Scroll down, click on create. That will create a test configuration. See this drop down here? The test configuration is created. You can always click on configure test events if you want to edit it. From this drop down, you pick a particular test configuration, change it. See here it says we can create up to 10 test events, and these test events we create will be persisted into the Lambda database, and we can log out of our AWS account here. If you go to another machine or another browser window, log in again, you will still find these tests to test your Lambda function. Now to test, click on test. That will use this test configuration to trigger our Lambda function with that data which we have provided. The test has completed successfully. If you scroll down, you will see the response. There is the execution result. See that? Response is the content that is coming from our Node.js based Lambda. For every Lambda function, the Lambda service will give, or for every Lambda invocation, there will be a unique request ID that will be generated. That is what you can see in the logs here or in the response. And at the end of it, these function logs are the CloudWatch logs. Let me copy this entire thing. Go back or go to a text editor, paste it so that I can explain in a much better way. I can zoom in a little more. So this is the response from our Lambda. This request ID was generated by the Lambda service, and these function logs you see are the CloudWatch logs. The start request ID and the end request ID is added. It is the same request ID for every invocation of Lambda. There is a request ID created by Lambda service, which you see up top here as well. These logs are being added by the Lambda service for us. We are not doing any of this logging in our application. When you do your Lambda, Java-based Lambda functions later on, you use system.out.println, you will see that those will end up in these CloudWatch logs. Similarly, you will learn how to use log4j, and also you will learn how to use Lambda, AWS Lambda context logger. All those logs will appear in the CloudWatch logs. That is the beauty of it. You also see a lot of useful information at the end that the Lambda service adds. See this duration, 10.30 milliseconds. That is the time took by our Lambda function to execute. But the billing duration is 11 milliseconds. It always rounds off this to the next highest millisecond. The memory size allocated was 128 MB, but the max memory used was 65 MB. See this initialization duration? You will be learning a lot more about this in lectures later on, cold starts, etc. So this is the duration that is taken by the Lambda service itself to create the required environment for this Lambda function to get executed. If it is a Java function, it needs a Linux environment. On top of it, it needs a JVM. On top of that JVM, our code will be executed. Similarly, for Node, it needs the respective Node environment. For that, this is the initialization time that was taken. We will not be billed. For that time, we need not pay. We don't have to worry. The billing time is always the Lambda function execution time. Now go back. Let's quickly change the code a little so that we can see a little more in action, and then we can conclude. Instead of hello from Lambda, you can change that to Lambdas are super easy and cool. Now to deploy this change, scroll down and you will see a deploy option. Let me minimize this so that we can see it better. Here, it's right here. I don't have to go all the way down. See the deploy button? Let me zoom in a little. Click on the deploy button and our changes will be saved to the Lambda repository. You will be doing this building and deploying of code right from your machine in lectures later on using the SAM CLI. We don't have to use this console like this. You will be saying SAM build, SAM deploy from your local machine, and our code will be deployed to the AWS cloud magically. For now, we are using the console. Now to test it, simply run the test again with the same configuration. Scroll down to see the response of your Lambda function. This time you see Lambdas are super easy and cool. So you have successfully created and triggered your very first Lambda.